The earliest documented people were registered in the history of modern Finland in about 8,800 BC, and since then it was developing as the trade route between the east and the west. The first written sources that mention Finland were in the 12th and 13th century AD. In the year 1323, the Swedish part of the Finnish history starts. Actually, the Swedish control over Finland was a part of the treaty between Sweden and Novgorod. A small part of Finland was under Novgorod's control, the part known today as Karelia. The rest of the territories were controlled by Sweden for about 500 years. However, the border wasn't stable during this time. It was shifted repeatedly because of numerous wars. Finland was all about trade routes. The oldest city here is called Turku, and its name literally means place of trade. Turku was founded in the middle of the 13th century, while Helsinki, today's capital of Finland, was founded in the year 1550. The main purpose for the city to be created was to compete with Tallinn for the trade routes on the Baltic Sea and around it. Interestingly, Finland took almost all social patterns from Northern European countries, including laws, social systems, and even religion, but it didn't take feudalism. And as a result, Finland is one of the few countries on the continent where peasants have never been enslaved in any form and have always kept a certain level of freedom. The Catholic Church Reformation, launched by Luther in the 16th century, played a major role in developing the written Finnish language. The New Testament was translated into Finnish, and actually Finnish books, mostly religious books, were published a lot within the next century. Later, Sweden got more power. The country managed to move borders further to the east using the time of Russia's depression. In the 17th century, Swedes strengthened the control over Finland, making the Swedish language more and more popular in the region. But the great power of Sweden wasn't eternal. It faced issues in the 18th century, and the power nearly vanished at the beginning of the 19th century. As a result, in 1808 and 1809, Russia conquered Finland in the war with Sweden. This period marks the beginning of the new era of the country, the Russian era. First time in history, Finland was united and formed a single entity called the Grand Duchy. Prior to this, Finland was divided by Sweden into provinces, and it had never been seen as a single country. Russia wanted to give more autonomy to Finland and avoid even more wars with Nordic countries, and hence Alexander I basically created the Finnish state. In 1812, Helsinki was made the capital of Finland. But the joint Finnish lands started forming their national movement, which was an absolutely unpredictable consequence of the plan to give more autonomy to Finnish people and keep them under Russian control. Russian authorities had little to no power over Finland, and all decisions were made solely by the emperor. So in 1863 the Finnish Diet or parliament was first formed, and in 1878 Finland got its own army. In 1899, Russia was about to dive into a crisis of the empire, and the rulers started making efforts to keep control of territories, especially over autonomies. In 1899, the first Russification era started. Russians announced that there was a strong separatist movement in Finland and started quickly pushing the Russian language and culture to the region. This lasted 6 years, till the First Revolution in 1905, when the emperor nearly lost his power. Finnish people started quickly forming their own independent legislative bodies in 1905, when the emperor of Russia was eagerly trying to keep power. Interestingly, all the reformations in the Finnish political sphere made Finland the first country in Europe where women got the right to vote in parliament elections. This happened in 1906. In 1909, Russia started the second wave of Russification. However, it failed due to a lot of internal and external threats to the emperor's power. Finally, in 1917, Finland approved the Declaration of Independence. Left political powers didn't want to lose their positions, and this led to a civil war that ended in May 1918, with left parties losing. In 1919, Finland became a republic and elected its first president. At this time, Finland started developing connections with Baltic countries and also Poland, but the main warrant of the country's freedom and safety was the League of Nations. In the 1930s, it became evident that the peace in Europe was very brittle, and Finland started tightening its connections with Baltic and Nordic countries rather than relying solely on the League of Nations. In 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed a secret agreement that basically gave the political control over Finland to Stalin. Immediately, Stalin expressed his wish to build Soviet military bases in Finland, but the country refused to obey, and in November 1939, the Winter War began. While the Soviet Union had more troops and equipment, the Winter War brought a lot of casualties to the Soviet army, since the climate was extremely harsh and the troops weren't ready to fight effectively in such conditions. Finland used ski troops. Those were highly motivated Finnish warriors with limited equipment but a perfect understanding of the area and its challenges. Eventually, Finland became famous all over the world for its tactics in the Winter War. Finland lost approximately 25,000 people in the war, while the Soviet Union lost 120,000 to 200,000 troops according to various sources, but still the northeastern part of the country was lost in this war. In 1941, when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, Finland saw its chance to reclaim the territories, but the prolonged war wasn't that successful, and eventually Finland lost some more territories in 1944. After World War II, Finland started warming its relations with the Soviet Union and strongly developing cooperation with Scandinavian and Baltic countries. When the Soviet Union fell apart in 1991, Finland didn't try to reclaim the territories and acknowledged Russia as a successor of the Soviet Union. The thing is that Finland was trying to cope with the worst economic crisis and didn't have the power to use this situation in its favor. In 1994, 57% of Finns voted to join the European Union, and in 1995 the Finnish parliament finalized the decision of the nation. Interestingly, in 2007, Finland was seen as the world's capital of technology. Nokia, the Finnish company, was selling about 40% of the world's cell phones at that time. In 2023, Finland joined NATO as the part of country's effort to prevent possible future war with Russia over territories. The country was playing neutrality for a long time to avoid possible tension and chose probably the best moment to eventually integrate into the Western military unions when Russia was too weak to protest that decision. Today, Finland is a country that is totally integrated into the European world. Despite pretty harsh weather conditions, Finns are claimed to be the happiest nation in the world. Also, the country shows perfect development of its economy, and its GDP per capita is just slightly lower than in the USA or Germany, for example. Also, it's about 2 times higher than in Baltic countries or in Poland.